What Brandy say? I wanna be there.
We can dance if you want, get it crackin' if you like. Must be a full moon. Feel like one of those nights. I ain't even gonna let you lie.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my favorite little lady, Brandy.
Hello babes, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, welcome. So in today's video we are going to be speaking about the iconic legendary Miss Brandy Norwood, one of my favorite singers. So let's get into it. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the beautiful, multi-talented, iconic legend Miss Brandy, who paved the way for the artists who came after her. She was the it girl of the 90s and 2000s and America's sweetheart, with one of the most versatile voices in the industry, and is referred to as the vocal Bible. Brandy Rayana Norwood was born on February 11th, 1979 in Macomb, Mississippi, to Willie Norwood, a gospel singer and choir director, and Sonia Norwood, who was a district manager at H&R Block. Like all great singers, Brandy began singing in the church at the tender age of 2 alongside her father, and would go on to perform her first gospel solo. At the age of 4, Brandy and her parents relocated to California as her father would receive a job offer to become the minister of a church. Brandy's musical interest increased when she became a mega fan of the legendary Whitney Houston at the age of 7. She would begin taking part in school talent shows and increasing her vocal ability, as well as becoming the choir leader at the church where her father taught.
Brandy sang with me in my children's choir, and eventually she took over. And it was so funny how she could demand that they respect her as the choir leader.
In 1989, at the age of 10, Brandy was discovered by producer Marcus Aurelius at an audition, and he was blown away by her vocals. He began to shop her demo around at different record labels. However, they didn't believe in a young Brandy at the time, so she began doing live shows to showcase her vocal ability. At a local talent show while performing, Brandy would be noticed by Chris Stokes, who was managing the group Immature at the time, and would sign her at 11.
Represented a young group of boys named Immature, and they were doing a talent show, and Brandy was in a talent show. Brandy sung exceptionally well.
Chris Stokes wanted to manage Brandy.
I wanted to actually sign her to a production contract.
Chris Stokes brought her into the Immature group. She would just sing background.
Brandy began singing background for Immature. Chris would also later create a show that starred Brandy, but would only last for 1 season. However, she would gain exposure from that short amount of time while on TV. Brandy's mom started to grow frustrated with Chris as she felt Brandy's talent was going to waste.
This little taste of being on stage, it helped her visualize what she was going to be one day.
Now we got a new show to a girl coming out. Brandy, show me leave me kind, sweet destiny.
Brandy always told me, Chris, you have to work with me. I'm going to be this big star. I'm the one.
But his focus was Immature, and I would constantly tell him, you're really missing out, because the person that you really should be focusing on is Brandy. But no one heard me.
However, Chris will set up an audition for Brandy at Atlantic Records with A&R exec Darryl Williams.
Darryl Williams heard Brandy, went crazy. Like, oh my God, she's hot.
It wasn't the vocals or the dancing or anything like that that got me. It was just her composure, and it was her sophistication. I couldn't let her get by me. I just knew that there was something special about her that I had to have.
He really believed in Brandy.
He felt Brandy had talent, and he didn't waste any time.
I had Brandy come in and audition for my boss, who was Sylvia Rohn. Brandy sang one of her songs that was on a demo tape, The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston, and she nailed it. For a 13-year-old to get that song was amazing.
In 1993, Brandy would begin recording her debut album while also getting a role for TV show Thea. However, the show was pulled after a short one season, and though the rest of the cast was disappointed with the cancellation, Brandy, although sad for the cast, was excited for herself because she wasn't really interested in acting at the time and wanted to focus more on her music. In '94, Brandy released her debut single, I Wanna Be Down, that would go on to be one of her biggest hits, spending 6 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 from her self-titled debut album. Upon the success of the release, the head of Atlantic Records, Sylvia Rohn, came up with the idea to re-record the track with a group of rappers, eventually being remixed with rap legends MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, and Yo-Yo.
I get exotic with the melodic tune, I get hypnotic with the moon, but you got to put me down.
Brandy was ecstatic to have such big names on her song, and to be a new artist, that was a huge deal. In a 2012 interview, she said, "The remix meant the world to me because she was fresh out the box and had superstars a part of her remix, and was also a huge fan of Queen Latifah. This is one of the best remixes, and I love the original, but this version is my favorite." Brandy worked with then unknown producer Keith Crouch for his and Brandy's first project. Keith has worked with some of the biggest names in music like Boyz II Men, Chaka Khan, Mary J. Blige, Toni Braxton, and produced one of my favorite Toni songs, Maybe, from her album Heat. When creating the album, Keith and Brandy had an understanding that while she was a child, she didn't want the teeny bop style songs, as she looked up to the greats like Whitney, Aretha Franklin, and the Clark sisters while still sounding age appropriate. In a 2012 Vibe magazine interview, Brandy stated that her collaboration with Keith at the time was very important to her because he wasn't trying to sound like anyone else, and she wasn't trying to sound like anyone else when singing. The album would go on to sell 2 million copies, with 30,000 copies being sold in a week. This album was such a great introduction to Brandy. For her to be so young and have the soul but yet youthfulness to her set the bar high for young singers coming after her. She had a beautiful raspy tone that was just the beginning of what we would hear from her. The album had something for everyone to enjoy, a taste of gospel vocals, R&B, hip-hop flavor, and of course, a ballad like all great R&B albums have, with the song Broken Hearted.
Broken hearted, but I guess I'm alright.
That is one of my favorite songs, especially with Wanye. They were singing their hearts out on that song. That is my favorite version of this song.
Oh, you know you're always on my mind. Think about you all the time.
And I play back all 3 parts of I Dedicate anytime I listen to this album. You can hear the influence of Whitney, Aretha, and Stevie so heavily with those songs, especially with her riffs and runs and how she uses her head and chest voice to let out certain notes. In part 1, you hear the Whitney influence. Part 2, you hear Stevie. Then in part 3, you hear Aretha.
For the world was my motivation. Hey, I dedicate to you this song. I look in your eyes, and I know that you do care. Hey, I dedicate.
Keep on turning, 'cause it won't be too long.
I don't know if it was done purposely, but this perfectly captured Brandy's voice and her vocal ability. In 1995, Brandy would work with the legendary Babyface on the song Sitting Up in My Room. That was written and produced by him. for the soundtrack of the 1995 film Waiting to Exhale. The song reached number 2 of the Billboard Hot 100, becoming Brandy's most successful single on the Billboard chart at the time. The song was performed on late night talk shows, the Soul Train Awards, the 39th Annual Grammys, and the 23rd Annual AMAs. And sold 1 million copies in the US, becoming platinum, helping to propel Brandy's career even further. If you're a 90s baby like me, then you were enamored by Brandy, from her voice to music videos and her star quality. She was a part of our childhood and inspired a generation of singers after her, like Ariana Grande, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Jasmine Sullivan, and the list goes on and on. Brandy was the it girl of the 90s who you couldn't escape seeing. Brandy was everywhere, from movies to music to live TV shows. Brandy was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards, which was a huge deal, especially for someone who was not only new in the industry, but to be going against such heavy hitters at such a young age, like Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, Toni Braxton, and Mariah Carey. Just being nominated in the 90s for such a prestigious award was something that many only hoped to achieve, but to be only 15 was incredible and just set her apart from her peers. In 1996, while working on her sophomore album, Brandy's mother had pitched a TV sitcom for her to be a part of, but because she was so focused on her music at the time and didn't want any distractions, but she ultimately decided to go on to the audition when hearing about the character. Brandy didn't do as well on the audition as they believed she would have, said Ralph Farquhar, the co-creator of Moesha.
Then Brandy went to meet with the network. She sat down at the head of the table and said, "I understand you want to talk to me?" And she proceeded to chair that meeting, if you will. They were just totally taken with it. Oh, yeah, definitely. After we sold Brandy, I thought, well, look, Brandy, come in and read. Why don't you read with me, just see where you are right now. She was so horrible. She was so bad. If the network had seen that reading, they would have pulled the plug.
As we know, Brandy is one to perfect her craft and would get acting lessons from the legendary Kim Fields to help her tap into Brandy, the actress.
I called up Kim Fields.
He said, listen, we're doing a series with Brandy. We'd like for you to coach her in, a few areas. I said, yeah. It was a way for me to, be able to pull another sister along.
Kim Fields wound up going out on the road with Brandy and working with her while she was on tour.
In an interview with Essence, Brandy said, "She really snapped me into major discipline. Without her, I wouldn't have nailed it." Moesha would go on to become one of the highest rated sitcoms on 90s television, garnering 3 to 4.5 million viewers every week. The show dealt with multiple issues that not only teens faced, but race, drug use, protective sex, and marital issues. The 90s belonged to Brandy. You name it, and Brandy was a part of it and doing it. In 1997, Brandy would become our first Black Cinderella, starring alongside her idol Whitney Houston. Whitney originally was supposed to play Cinderella. However, due to being in her 30s, they felt she was too mature to play the role and should instead play the fairy godmother, in which she would recommend Brandy play Cinderella.
The part is Cinderella, and Whitney Houston is Brandy's fairy godmother indeed. As executive producer of the new TV movie, Whitney handpicked Brandy for the role.
Whitney called me and said, "Brandy, I got this project," and when she said that I want you to play Cinderella, I got butterflies. I'd start screaming, "Mom, Mom, Mom, we gotta do it." So it was really exciting.
I remember the day this aired as a little girl. I was beyond ecstatic because I loved Brandy so much. And listen, I am here for anything theatrical, and the fact that Whitney and Brandy were going to be singing and acting in this was something that not only young children were excited to see, but also adults.
Impossible, 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 impossible.
Cinderella exposed Brandy to a new audience that would take interest in the singer and the next projects that she had coming. She would go on to get a part in the 1998 film I Know What You Did Last Summer that would outperform the original, bringing in $16.5 million the opening week. Brandy would begin reworking on her second album and at first had a hard time getting producers and writers to be a part of the project, and she wanted to sing something different and change up her sound. In the 1999 Jet interview, Brandy said that she was barely satisfied with the songs being presented and that she didn't want to record songs that didn't sound like her. She also wanted to have input in what she was singing and what felt true to her.
And this album, I think, is more mature than my first album. Like, I have more input, I have more feelings about this album. You know, my feelings are more mature. What I sing about is different than what I sang about in the first album.
She would later go on to snag Darkchild, one of my favorite producers, and they would create magic in the studio, releasing 7 singles off of the album, with the first single being The Boy Is Mine, collaborating with singer Monica. Becoming both Monica and Brandy's first #1 hit and 5th top 10 entry for the Billboard Hot 100, bouncing from the #23 spot and becoming the 2nd song in history chart to ascend directly to a number spot from a previous beneath the top 20, selling 605,000 copies, reaching the top 10 in 14 countries, and spending 45 weeks on the chart, earning both Brandy and Monica a Grammy for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals. The album would be released in June 1998 and would be Brandy's highest selling and highest charting album to date, being certified quintuple platinum, selling 16 million copies worldwide. Now let's get into the music on Never Say Never. This album was outstanding. The vocals we got are some of the best vocals I've ever heard. Some people tend to hide behind the beat, and it's only the reason sometimes that the songs take off, but Brandy, she turned her voice into an instrument, and while many thought it was the background singers doing the background and ad-libs, it was Brandy's vocal stacking.
Gotta get you in my world, 'cause baby I can't sleep. Ooh, have you ever loved somebody?
Brandy's voice has started developing, and on every album we got a new sound from her. Never Say Never from beginning to end had hits and real music. You could dance, but you could also get in your feelings with the song like Have You Ever, written by Diane Warren. Am I the only one who cries anytime they hear this song?
Wanna break down and cry so bad.
But Brandy evokes these emotions out of you when she sings, and it's not always about the lyrics, but the way she sings. Her voice was anointed by God. The voice, emotion, and passion you can't buy. With Brandy, it wasn't about money when she sung. She sings from her heart and with feeling. I get goosebumps anytime she sings. It doesn't matter what she's singing. If she's singing A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, I will get goosebumps because that is how immaculate her voice is. Darkchild went into the studio and does what he does best, and that's creates a masterpiece and phenomenal body of work. The way he's able to feed off of his artists and what sounds work for them is just remarkable. He pushes boundaries, and the way him and Brandy are able to make music together is still unmatched. When you remove the instrumentals or beats from the song, you hear the vocal genius that is Brandy, with songs on this album like Happy.
No one, only you can make me feel this way. You always seem to brighten up my day. Baby, you can make me happy.
Almost Doesn't Count, Never Say Never.
Never say never. Who would start a girl like me? For so easily. Who would?
Have You Ever, Tomorrow, and the entire album just put people on notice to how much of a supreme vocalist Brandy was, all at the age of 19. And when she gave us the Full Moon album, but I'll get to that shortly. Brandy was a positive representation for young girls and role model, and in particular for young black girls who looked up to her and saw themselves in Brandy. In 1999, Brandy would get her own Barbie, who came with an autographed poster.
Brandy's so cool. Now Brandy's a doll.
The doll did exceptionally well, selling millions and doing so good that 2 more versions of the Brandy doll would be created and sold, becoming one of Mattel's highest selling toys. The doll had micro braids and the same features as Brandy, the same beautiful brown complexion, and was on almost every little girl's wish list for Christmas. And this is actually the only doll, well, not the only doll, but one of the few dolls that was created after an artist and looks just like the artist or extremely similar. I remember opening this doll up for Christmas, and when I tell y'all this happy screams that I let out, I could not wait for Christmas to roll around because of the commercials that would constantly come on advertising the doll. The 90s and the 2000s, what a time. Brandy would also go on to become the cover girl in 1999 due to her popularity and how much of a positive role model she was. She appeared in multiple cover girl ads that were in magazines, billboards, and posters, and multiple CoverGirl commercials with a catchy jingle that girls would sing along to every time the commercial would air.
What a beautiful world. So easy breezy, beautiful cover girl.
Once again exposing Brandy to a new crowd. In November of 1999, Brandy had went on a hiatus from music and Moesha was put on pause. Brandy at the time was stated to have been hospitalized due to dehydration. However, later on it would be revealed that she had a nervous breakdown due to a hectic work schedule and an emotionally abusive relationship that Brandy was working non-stop from Moesha, making albums, press runs, movies, tours. She barely had time to catch a break or enjoy the massive success that she was achieving, which I think is unhealthy for anyone, but for a teenager, it's not healthy at all because you're achieving things that some people twice your age haven't achieved. You have everything at your fingertips, and let alone working with no breaks and having to deal with being financially responsible for those around you. People are dependent on you, and for that burden to be on someone so young is a lot to take in and deal with. And then add on a toxic relationship is a recipe for disaster. Which is why I think we should give our young stars who grew up during that time, I feel like we don't give young people enough grace when it comes to them developing or figuring out themselves in the industry. Even today, you would think that with the way our stars were treated as millennials or people who grew up in the 90s, that we would give more grace to people coming up with this generation and in this generation, because being so young and being thrown into Hollywood, the music industry, acting, singing, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, it's a lot. Everything you say is used against you. You can be a child, you can be a teen. If you're a teen and you act too much like a teen, it's an issue. If you're a teen and you're more mature and you act and you have certain opinions, then that's used against you. And I feel like there's this burden that is placed on teenagers in the industry, but I do think there needs to be more grace, because how many of us have made mistakes in our teen years or did things in our teen years, but we didn't have a camera following us or a camera in our face? I just think they need more grace, but I've gone on a tangent, so let's get back to the video. Brandy was terrified of dropping a new album, of course being afraid that she wouldn't be able to deliver the same quality album that she did with Never Say Never and be able to live up to the success of that album. And boy, was she wrong. In the fall of 2000, after reshifting her focus back on music, she began formulating ideas for her third album. Brandy didn't want to start from scratch with new producers and writers like she did for her previous album. She wanted to build on the foundation she already had with Rodney Jerkins, who is Darkchild, of course, because the two were so familiar with each other and knew exactly what to do when they would get in the booth, and it was so easy for them. On this album, they wanted to switch up the sound and bring something new, not only to the album, but to music and R&B music. Rodney was in the middle of finishing up Michael Jackson's Invincible album when he had gotten on board for Brandy's album. Through the process of working with the legendary King of Pop, he picked up sonic tricks from him as stated in the 2022 Billboard article. The song It's Not Worth It was scrapped from Michael's album, and the song ended up in Brandy's hands with Michael's ad-libs still attached to it. Roddy stated in the 2022 Billboard interview that the way Michael was recording his ad-libs, he had never recorded backgrounds like that in his life, and said, "I remember the first day telling Brandy, this is how we're going to do the backgrounds.
Don't say goodbye, this can't be it. Baby, please, cause it's not worth it. Not worth it.
She was hesitant for a moment, but he won her over. I was like, yo, this is how Mike was doing the background. And then she was like, okay, yes, wait, let's do it. Because the bar that Michael had was so high that if he was doing it, then let's go for it. Brandy would begin working with Darkchild and his songwriting production team, Kanisha Pratt, Nora Payne, and his longtime co-collaborator, LaShawn Daniels, who has penned some of our favorite songs like Say My Name and Lose My Breath for Destiny's Child, Whitney Houston, It's Not Right, Michael Jackson's You Rock My World, Toni Braxton, He Wasn't Man Enough for Me, Telephone for Lady Gaga and Beyonce, Can't Leave Him Alone with Ciara, Brandy's Never Say Never, and the list goes on and on. I really would suggest that some of you research LaShawn Daniels. He was such an incredible, talented, phenomenal songwriter. The first single that would be released was What About Us. The first single that will be released, What About Us, drew high anticipation from listeners for the album to drop, as this was a complete new and different sound for not only Brandy but Darkchild as well. The song jumped from number 42 on the Hot 100 to number 7 and would spend 7 weeks there. The video was also nominated for a Viewer's Choice Award at the 2002 VMAs. Brandy was so ahead of her time with this album. I mean, you can hear her influence from this very album in the artists of today's music, like Ariana Grande in her Positions album and Sweetener.
If you want, say I do, but I'll flirt. Just say the word, you know I'm yours. Just drop a pen and don't reverse.
And Jasmine Sullivan's
Get to come and pick up your feeling.
Chris Brown's Heartbreak on a Full Moon.
Ooh, yeah. It's not right, it ain't right. Because you, baby. Because you, baby.
People who studied and loved music, which is who Brandy is. She was a student of music. Back in the day, artists would study previous artists that came before them and knew music of all genres, regardless of whatever they came from. They respected the art that is music. And we also had music classes, something that I think is so important for every child to learn, but so much funding and programs have been cut, and these programs practically don't exist anymore, mainly in public schools because of the funding and having to choose what programs get cut. But back to the Full Moon album. Full Moon was named in honor of its first track and the fact that after 3 years, Brandy felt like things had come full circle for her and that she felt complete.
I ain't even gonna front. I ain't even gonna lie. Since you woke up in the club.
This album was ahead of its time, and though it sold millions, receiving mixed reviews, the body of work truly wasn't appreciated until years later. When we talk about a solid body of work that was fresh and new, this album was it. The bar that Brandy set was so high, I don't think anyone could achieve that again in the way that she and Darkchild did, because of how much both he and she lived and breathed music, as she sings in her 211 album, dedicating a song to music and her love for it.
Right by my side, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. I love about you.
Which is an album that is so slept on and so underrated, as well as Aphrodisiac. But back to Full Moon. Full Moon was the album we needed to shake up the music world and to not get comfortable with one sound. With songs like I Thought
that we could be. You made a fool of me, and I cannot
Heart, Nothing. This album captured the magic of what Brandy's vocals are. This is an album I play from beginning to end. No matter how many times I hear it, I never get tired of it. It's a classic, timeless album, and Brandy doesn't get enough credit when it comes to her impact in the music she's created. She is a legend. We already knew that Brandy was that girl, but Full Moon set her apart from her peers and cemented her status as one of the top vocalists in music, receiving praise from legends like Patti LaBelle, Anita Baker, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Gladys Knight, and so many others.
Reality that a lot of people may understand, they may not. That is one of the illest voices on the face of the planet. The girl literally can do anything. I've been a fan of her long before I came out. She has only gotten better. She's an amazing artist. I respect her immensely, and I've listened to her shit all the time. He is always on my mind. What's a sunny day? My God, if you put it down right where you want it, that's I mean, there's so much amazing music. And Brandy is an artist.
Hi Brandy, it's your Auntie Gladys. I want to congratulate you on your 20 years in this industry, and that's almost unheard of these days. So I am very, very proud of you. You keep up the good work. We need more and more and more artists like you. Thank you so much for being the artist that you are. I love you.
I just want to say that I love you so much. It is 20 years of the most magnificent singing in the world. I honestly rate you as seriously the best female singer out there. I respect you so much, and as a friend, you're adorable and so kind, true, honest, sweet.
Brandy is a voice that cannot be duplicated or imitated. When you hear her voice, you automatically know that's Brandy. No one sounds like Brandy, and I think she deserves her own Super Bowl halftime show. She's been in the business for 30 years. She deserves so much. She should have received a Vanguard Award and a Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. It's people who've come in this business years after her, who have studied her and received these accolades. Give my girl her things. I'd be here for hours if I was to list all of the ways she has contributed to the industry and opened doors for so many young girls who came after her and never switched up, might I add. She has remained humble and a positive role model for young women, even though people gave her hell for getting pregnant at the age of 23 to her then boyfriend. And I get it, she was a child star and had this clean image, but it was time for her to live her life. The only reason she lied about being married to her then boyfriend and father of her child, being a child star and pregnant, was considered taboo back in the 90s, 2000s, and years before that. Which is why I say we need to give child stars more grace. They need to be allowed to make mistakes. They should be corrected, yes, but I feel like people want to hold their mistakes against them for the rest of their life and never allow them to grow from that. Full Moon sold 156,000 copies in its first week and would go on to become certified platinum. The next single that would go on to be released is Full Moon and received much praise for her vocals as well as the production, stating it was the standout track from the album. The song would go on to peak number 18 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 15 on the UK Billboard charts. Brandy was so ahead of her time with this album, which is why she is referred to as the blueprint for R&B. Her ear for music and how she knows when to harmonize and ad-lib. It's not a talent that many have. Brandy will always be one of my favorite vocalists. I mean, the way this woman gets in the studio and creates a song, and then when she performs it live, she takes that version of the song and makes it 10 times better. It's not something that can be duplicated. She deserves her flowers. She deserves her things in her praise because this woman has changed the industry and music. And although she's not acknowledged as others and her peers, and I again would like to see my girl have her own Super Bowl halftime show because she deserves it. I just think that Brandy is, although we speak about her when it comes to vocals, she's also underrated at the same time. I can't even list I can't even list the amounts of songs that I love from her. The entire Full Moon album, repeat constantly, Never Say Never. The way she has progressed from each individual album. 211 is so slept on. The entire album 211 was so good. Aphrodisiac, but another album that slept on, I mean, B7. Brandy is such a phenomenal artist and we don't appreciate her enough. So that was why I created this video, and to put the girls up on game to who Miss Brandy was back in the day. Even though people are aware, they still like to deny who she was. And with that being said, this video has come to an end. Let me know below what are some of your favorite Brandy movies, songs. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that she was in a movie double platinum with the iconic Diana Ross. I mean, what other 90s singer was in a movie with the legendary Diana Ross? No one else but Miss Brandy. But don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Baby,